hear crickets. I can't shut.
Lovey-dovey crickets. Lovey-dovey Valentine crickets in a couple days. Unless you're the bug humbug type, or just like candy. I'll focus on the mercantile, focused on our minds by it all. You don't even know anymore what we're really doing. Some roll up in it, some don't. We're commercial consumers, as we've been changed since about the 60s, and then really intensely a few, after they got that rolled in, especially after 71. You're the consumers. You'll suck it up. They'll make it warm and fuzzy for you. Lovey-dovey crickets. Valentine's Day's coming, folks. For those of you that will participate. But I wanted to point out, what is that? And I don't want to get too deep, just want to touch it and we'll move on. I just want to let us know. We will celebrate lots of things that we have no clue about. And some of us may agree with it. I'm not talking about the surface stuff. I'm talking about we may agree with the depth of it. It may be that you are in this within this belief system that moves on. But where does Valentine's Day come from? What is all this stuff? What is this things they tell us that we just absorb and even tolerate at some point without any word? We'll look at a whole lot of other things, but we won't look at the deception against us and move against it, which is really I'm trying to figure out what it is I really don't like about it. This is such a multidimensional problem. So many people are absolutely, just literally clueless on what to do against it. And I'm always trying to figure out, what can I tell people? It's right here in front of us. It's transparent to most everybody. Even those that think they see it don't see the right thing, and if they do see it, they don't really move against it. Again, that accessory to the crime against us. So I just want, I have my thoughts about a lot of this, but I went back real quick let's open this thing up here quickly for what Valentine's Day is. Everyone thinks of, it's cards and flowers and, loved ones and things like that and candy and yes, we have that sentiment about us, and we use that day to do that. I'm not talking about the surface stuff that we should be doing every day anyway in one regard. But let me just read from a couple spots, and we can just kind of look at a quick little thing about what we end up embracing. And in our embrace, we set the example that others should embrace it and do it, even if some of us that are humbug about it. And I can tell you, I've been pretty humbug about a lot of this stuff anymore. Once you start seeing things, it just loses its interest. It's part of, I tell you about the, funds, money, the fiat stuff. Yes, we all need it. Yes, I could use a lot more, but it just doesn't, I'm not driven by it. It just hasn't really, it just almost looks like an evil to me. And I'm really not talking about the value that it might represent in trade with someone else who may not know about it or would have to do it just because you're forced to. But I try not to example support for these things. And so it might make me look a little bit humbugish, I guess. But let's look at it quickly here. So Saint Valentine, so that should focus your mind on what we're talking about. It isn't just some flowers and candy and, whatever you do on the day you think is going to promote your love to the one you're courting. And we'll look at that word, but we'll get to that. St. Valentine's, officially known as St. Valentine's of Rome, is a 3rd century Roman saint widely celebrated on February 14th and commonly associated with courtly love. No, not Courtney love, courtly love. Although not much of a St. Valentine's life is reliably known, and whether or not the stories involve two different saints by the same name is also not officially decided, it is highly agreed that St. Valentine was martyred and then buried on the Via Flaminia to the north of Rome. In 1969, the Roman Catholic Church removed St. Valentine from the general Roman calendar. The general Roman calendar here is capitalized G, capital R, capital C, because so little is known about him. However, the Church still recognizes him as a saint, listing him in the February 14th spot on Roman martyrology. You even know there was a thing, Roman martyrology. The legends attributed to the mysterious saint are as inconsistent as the actual identification of the man. Stop there. Let's go back. Courtly love, not Courtney love, but courtly love. What's court but referencing a monarch? Well, what monarch would that be within the Catholic religion? When you do this on Valentine's Day, you're not, and I guess you could make your own definition and make your own excuse that what you're doing really marks the day, but why would you mark the day of your love for somebody with flowers on the day that is celebrated universally as the day someone was killed, martyred? And maybe what are those flowers you're actually promoting, presenting to the one you love actually mean in the context of its official meaning? Is this deception that seems to keep honest that we don't know, that those that are in their belief systems think you're supporting them and you don't even have a clue about it, is the same different distinction and difference that I see when I criticize the mask of Guy Fawkes is now the symbol of Anonymous, when in fact it was the symbol of a usurpation by the Jesuit order. It's now a symbol of that Jesuit order overthrow of a legitimate government. And so we do this thing to ourselves. This goes on and on. I won't go on more. I'm just pointing out we are habitualized and mimic the ritualization of the support of what I consider evil in the world, evil in the world. And we don't even understand it. Everything we see and do, certainly as a commercial remedy, a commercial endeavor, it has been adulterated in a number of ways and through a number of generations, and we don't even know their origins, and we just continue to celebrate them. I've got a link to this little, what I just read. You can read it yourself. I've got a link, certainly the wikis there about this, that if you want to see what history talks about, you'll find out if when you read on, and I'll just put this out. I'd like to have you read this stuff for yourself, so it's not just me talking about it all the time. Again, getting the black and white in your eyes is so important. I can't stress it more than just to say that. Awarenesses will come to you that may not come to me, but the general awarenesses will come to both of us. And it isn't really, there's no way to doubt that then. That you'll find that actually there's so much misunderstanding about this so-called saint. They made a saint of someone that the Catholic Church couldn't even identify accurately. But when you look very carefully and you read about it, you can find out the current knowledge, the current treatment of what Valentine's Day was about was really a literary creation. A lot of creative people writing, poets and things bring on what we conceive of it today. And so the actual origins are actually covered over. And to me anymore, that was fake news of the day. That was to cover over a truth. And look, if you think that today we're not going to be affected by the fake news, so-called, these are the lies, these are the frauds and the felonies against us in the form of information. If you don't think that what we're seeing and we don't destroy today is not going to continue, you're deluded. This is why we have to step up to stop this. Not to call out the fake news, to call out the fraud and then work to arrest it. A little different. It's a subtle shift over what is going on and what I see. To all of us that may or may indulge the Saint Valentine myth and fairy tale, go ahead. I mean, that's okay. But remember, what you're doing is when we do this, leaving our example here and what we're perpetuating. This is like these things are almost everywhere. All these things we think that are so that aren't. I mean, I go off, I start thinking, my mind just flashes on all the things I want to just say to a lot of people. I just want to shake you all for what you think you know that just aren't. And I just don't know what I can do about that because I can't reach through this line to do so. And if you're in front of me, I'm not that vicious anyway, so I wouldn't. I'd like to, just to catch your attention. No, it really is not quite like that. You got to get out of our habits. You have what we think is what we need to know, what we think we know. I see so many people that really don't get it, and well, I won't say it, people are in trouble, and they don't even know how to extricate themselves. I mean real trouble. And it's all system caused. All the stuff I see anyway. We do enough to ourselves, between ourselves, it's bad. I'm saying there is an oppression on people they can't even begin to deal with. And periodically they come to my door, as they did last night. I'm just don't know what to do except to just give what will come out of me at the moment to resolve what tip of the iceberg problem. I'm looking at someone that is being destroyed by the system, their families being destroyed, and I look at them as they're just the pinnacle of the depth at which the system will beat people down, and everybody's in the pit. And you'll deny it. You'll argue with people in the chats. You'll talk about all the stuff you know. You'll argue with me. Oh, that don't work. Oh, this don't work. That don't. How are you walking with that? Isn't that being a hypocrite? You don't even understand. You don't have a clue. You start arguing with me, I can tell you just don't know. And you're wasting your time, and you're wasting my time. There's some real harm going on. And it usually starts with this Valentine's, because what comes out of a successful Valentine's courtly love, engaging the monarch, is the permission and the natural consequence of what courtly love may lead to, and in its natural sense, given you're young enough, I suppose. You're going to have a product of that courtly love, even though we didn't need to go through all that to do this, but we may run across, because of this false narrative that we're always given, and the cluelessness that we've walked headlong and face-long into that wall, didn't even see it, it was transparent to us, and this is my problem with all this. We are absolutely oblivious to the transparent controls that are all around us. That I've told you, I see plenty of them, and they're not transparent to me any longer. And I always concern myself a bit with, what is it I'm not seeing? I mean, it's a lot of my thoughts are that when I have when I'm faced with having to decide things, what direction do we go? What do we work with? What do we have to work with? What obstacles are invisible to me that I haven't yet seen? Looking for the anomalies in the system. And you all think maybe, oh, why you work too hard, you think too much. No, well, okay, then you're not up there then. You're not with it. Or I'm not capable of doing that. Well, you are. If you get yourself in a mission that you need to, wrong that you need to make right, you'll pick it up quick enough, believe me. Anybody that I work with does. But we're not making stories. We see a problem, and we're working with each other to try and get it worked out. And so you do your courtly love, everything works out, success. Your roses didn't get put on the grave of the saint that died as a martyr on the day you thought you were actually professing your love to your loved one, and maybe in 9 months something comes along. And a couple months after that, you listen to everyone that you've listened to get you to that point, and you haven't prepared yourself for the lack of fiduciary duty that a doctor has to you and your little one. And this may happen to you, which becomes an interesting investigation. And I'm not here to condemn one way or the other. I'm here to figure out what's up with this, and what steps do we take to avoid these dangers in the world that have been placed before us, that we ritualize and bring into our life as a normalcy, which not. Meaning it has having a whole other meanings that the people that are actually driving your life use. Whether you believe it or not, or whether you can articulate it or see it, is irrelevant. They're still there. And you've taken no steps to protect yourself against it. But this story came up, which was indeed shocking in a way, the way they ruled this out. Shocking, infant twins die simultaneously after vaccines. Medical board rules just a coincidence. Just a coincidence that these twin newborns, twin girls, this is very, very rare. So rare, this medical board ordered that a special investigation be done, and yet the board comes back in a way and says they cannot see any correlation between the vaccines and what they deem to be sudden infant death syndrome. Now, to me, given I know how courts work, they narrow the field of review to certain things so they don't have to come to the conclusions, and they know to do that. These people are not stupid. They're put in those positions in order to protect their ministry. You don't think this is all about religion at some point. And they come to this conclusion, which may or may not be viable, but when I looked at it, their conclusion only looked at some narrow windows of things and not necessarily all of other information that may be out there. In fact, the one thing they could have relied on to say we could not make a distinction between the vaccine and another cause we know of wasn't even stated, which is how I start to analyze how whether or not these people actually did the studies that there should have been. Word to the wise, 2 infant twins died 2 days after their vaccines. The medical board came out after some investigation and said they couldn't find direct causation from that. And I'm saying, okay, to myself, I'm saying, all right, what other things? They didn't even mention it. They just said, oh, what we have before us doesn't show that there's a causative, the vaccines were a causative factor. But folks, if you have little ones, you better take notice. Do you want to put yourself in the position of these people? Or know of people that will? For me, the product data insert is all I need to know. They say it can cause death. Why would I want to do that to my little one? On someone's surmise, guessing by golly, that, oh, it won't affect you. You want to put yourself to a statistic? But what is this thing that they brought up as an excuse, they call it SIDS, Sudden Infant Death Syndrome? This is serious stuff. And then we get a mishmash, and none of this was talked about, and so I'm wanted to let you know, because while we're here, it's like public service awareness, folks. This is serious. If it doesn't harm you, it can kill you stuff. And I found a place to look, and I'll give you the link in the blogcaster. Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, is there a vaccine connection? And there's a discussion on this website that goes through and explains there has been some checks that weren't talked about in the other study by a Dr. Vera Scheibner, where they worked on a device that would actually, they call it a cot watch, and down under they say this is not a sudden infant death syndrome, they call it a cot watch disease or something associated with sleeping. Cot watch is what they call it. And this device was a study of infants that were in a study group that was watched for their respiration. And in fact, it was found that there was a higher incidence of respiratory problems with infants that were after the vaccine as they had as those that didn't have it, indicating there would be somewhat of a correlation that certainly was not discussed in the other one. So I'm not here to beat down on the vaccines, because the vaccines, you're going to find out in these studies, I've told you, some of these vaccines are really, you should not take them. But some of them are taken way too early and way too much. And this is where you all have to sit down and really look at what's going on here. And with this sudden infant death syndrome, this is just you don't know your baby dies. You don't know why. It just dies. There's been a thought about the correlation to vaccines. This study was the first one I'd seen that actually shows at least respiratory difficulties after vaccines against a control group. But farther down on this link was a very interesting thing, because I'm not here to necessarily destroy a useful tool, given it's still there, was a discussion about what might be a cause for SIDS other than the vaccines. And before I go on too far, I almost forgot. For those of you on Prodcast or Pastcast, this, I believe, is BTWRLM 201. And excuse me for the interruption, as I remember now. Also, heard on Freakers Ball Friday, Grimner continuing the donations request. Apparently we need a little bit more. And if you could, all you can, whatever you can, there's a front page on the reallibertymedia.com website, donation page. Choose your poison there and donate if you will, whatever you can. And apparently there is a need for a little extra hardware coverage to keep this archives running, to keep the ability to keep the website up, to do all that gets done to be where we are and maybe push to get to where we aren't. I hope all y'all are doing that somehow. I'm not getting many requests to get on new networks, but that's okay. Again, I still thank Vince Easley for doing what he does to set up the YouTube account and putting all the comments in there, and we're getting a little more viewership on that side as well after the fact. So all this stuff helps, and donations go to reallibertymedia.com to keep Grimner in a lot of stuff to do, and so I guess that keeps him doing it. So without a little bit of support here, we're literally absolutely commercial-free input, output, content, interaction. Please do your part if you can. And if you can't, I thank you for tuning in and spreading the word. You can do that too. You can, and I don't know why, I have to ask. Apparently, when you click a like on one of your players, wherever they are found, whether that's on the iHeart or whether that's on SoundCloud or Spreaker or wherever, it counts toward making the network a little more valuable, and it makes its rankings higher so people can find it. So if you feel that I'm giving the information, and any of the other hosts are giving information that needs to be heard, we'll be ranked a little bit higher for some other one who's interested to be able to click on it. Thank you for those that have donated. Thank you for those that will, and into the future. We only do this once a year, and doesn't mean you can't do it and when you can, but there's lots of ways to donate. Right now it's just focusing on finances to keep everything flying. And I appreciate all that are there. Getting back to the sudden infant death syndrome, I want to point out again, not to bash vaccines. As I've told you, there's certain things that can work in Western medicine, but everything in moderation, folks. I found a very interesting discussion about sudden infant death syndrome that looks at it with an eye to find out why. What's going on over this thing that may have been a reason they could have used in the other study that just vanquished the fact in the twins. That is so rare, folks, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. But so, notwithstanding that rarity, this study, or this look at this problem, victory over crib death, was an interesting view that it may not be vaccines, and we don't know the contributive or causative factor. If you have a little one having respiratory problems, and you're putting in an environment that you don't know is now been created in the crib itself that causes poisoning, you've just inadvertently put a death sentence on the little ones in the crib. And they found out here that there's an organism that it's not deadly on its own, but in its life functions, it creates very deadly, heavier than air toxic gases, which are activated by heat, which are activated by moisture, which are accelerated by bodily fluids, that they had evidence of, in some cases, red outline marks around where a baby would normally lay, that they found out it was this bacteria. I can't remember. I think it was a bacteria that was accelerated in its growth. And they found out if they put a special sealant type of bag around the mattress, they could by one study, just eliminate crib death. And I thought, and you go through and read all this about this, if you have people, you need to tell them. They have some suggestions if you don't have one of these covers, if this is part of it. But here we are, someone who took the time to look at this as a scientist and actually come to some conclusion about the existence of a real thing, not an imaginary thing, that I found interesting that this report had done before, that the other report didn't include as a study part to find out if these organisms were in the cribs and that the twins were in the same crib and in the condition. To show us that we have a little bit of responsibility to understand that we may have something to participate in when we see these problems, that we do the investigation, at least give information that people can go do, and we can eliminate this potential problem. Wouldn't it be interesting to find out that it's a two-part killer? You give your little ones, and let's just give it over to the vaccines that you have, that they're fine the way they're told. You give your little ones vaccines, they put them into respiratory distress, and then you stick them in the crib that is trapping heavier than air toxic gases. So they're thousands of times more toxic than carbon monoxide coming out of these little critters that grow in the mattress. That otherwise, the critters, little bacteria or fungus, whatever they are really harmless. I thought this was a fascinating look and a study. My interest is let's solve the problem there. I mean, if you're successful in your, no matter what your belief is about Valentine's Day, and 9 months later you have a bouncing baby joy going on, and then 2 months later you don't understand this simple little problem, and your baby dies, that's not such a happy ending, is it? So we want to get more knowledgeable about nature and its life processes. The thing that is given lip service to as they blame you for all the faults. This is just nature. Nature, life lives, folks. It finds a way. And so, I guess certainly if you have a pink ring around your mattress, where the baby lays, maybe you need to replace the mattress for sure. But the byproducts are heavier than air, so you can also lift, if you didn't know, I mean, even if you don't have the pink ring, that was just the evidence of the organism, you can tip one end of the crib up, or wherever it is, and make sure that there's airflow, and the heavier than air toxic gases will actually pour away and into your room, so now you get to breathe them. Fascinating what we don't know, right? We're harmed by the things we think are so that aren't. Now, if that's the case, then everybody who has a mattress, and over time you have these beasties that are living and making their toxic gases, and we wonder about old people too. Anybody with respiratory distress, I suspect, would be susceptible to this. So when you get your family going, and they do survive, you got to protect them. And we move on now to what was called a breaking news. A constitutional carry passes in New Hampshire. And I just want to make mention of two things. Again, it's you, or your so-called representative, you pushing your representative to start putting in law. This is what we learned a long time ago, and I keep suggesting it to you. I've been amazed after I realized it, because I didn't know before until I seen it myself, that we, the people, have the right and the power to make our laws that we want. We don't have to leave it up to representatives on their own, and we certainly do not want to leave it up to the legal universities to do so, as they are just flat pelting the legislators with bills, thousands, folks. I told you, I would have never guessed it had we not engaged it in 2013. And they do it every year. Thousands and thousands of bills go in. You ought to step up as the people and make your own. And this is one of the ways you start doing it. If you really believe in the Second Amendment is an inalienable right, or something pertinent, the fact of the government's existence, why not go ahead and do something like this in your state? You make constitutional carry, in other words, any carry, concealed or anything, not needing a permit, a regulation, a sign-up or anything, because registration is confiscation, isn't it? It's regulation. I still don't understand how they do a regulation or a license or a permit, being those are commercial. I've talked about all this. Your firearm is in commerce. That doesn't mean that you have one of those. That's what they call it if it makes the definition, which most of your guns, your self-protection appliances are not. They're not firearms, but that's what the regulations cover. So how the states are to be able to regulate to carry that, I'm not so sure. What they need to do is, like I've said, distinguish between the two styles, and then the government, or the people of the state government, need to say, I get to carry this any way I want. If it's not clear, see, folks, this is the thing that confuses me. If it's a confusion, it's more of the joke. Why would you, we're in a day, I think I twittered this, we are in a day where we literally have to give ourselves the law to say that shall not infringe meant something. Can you believe this? Why do we have to do that? Is the definition of an oppression and an occupier on your soil. People don't recognize that. But I wanted to point out that as you protect yourself and have the right to, and really more to the point, you protect yourself against the government that has gone beyond. And I don't advocate that, because I think we're not too smart right now. I wrote about this way back a long time ago, about 1999. About we were too drunk on our own aggrandizement and stupidness about what we thought we knew about ourselves and the power of the people. That those of us that thought that the Second Amendment could be used right now, we'd be drunk under the power. We'd be too drunk to do anything. Maybe that's not the best way to go. So this is a better way. Go ahead and start making laws for everything you find that needs to be made right. You find a law, get someone pitch it, learn how to do it, jump in, and get the laws that we need done to start making things more certain at the state level. Now, this will only extend to New Hampshire, and then anybody will have to do comedy in the other states for this, but this is why we need to have more and more states going and doing this. If you believe there's a constitution and there's some things that need to be recognized, have the states recognize them without excuse. With our right to bear arms, we're supposed to have this right to travel, right? We're supposed to have this ability to go where we will because we're a free people. And I don't understand why people don't get the fact that when it was required to be registered and controlled, maybe you're not free so much. That this traveling thing is now coming in up as an important issue, and I always am careful to watch how we are guided by the nose to the things that are off point, yet we're told a lot of what we need to know. It's inside that are nuggets of the truth that should guide us and how we have to deal with this. Let's move on now to travel and the right to travel, and now we're moving into the aliens' right to travel. And there's a little battle going on with this Trump, alien ban and all this other stuff and the nuances. And I'm seeing that there's an interesting problem where Trump's attorneys weren't actually prepared enough to do the right answer that a tyrant would use, that Obama and Bush have used, utilizing. They claim that what they did that for was for the national security, but when the court asked them what's your reason, they didn't say national security, and you can't see it. Which is every other president did, of which I'm kind of amazed it wasn't used right now. Whether or not that's right or wrong, I'm not so happy with that, but that's the answer. You live in a battlefield that the occupier is the government itself, and no one went to guns, and no one knows what to do with it, and everyone thinks that, oh, rah, the next guy's going to be protective of a whole lot of stuff, and they do just enough to get you on league, and the rest of the stuff they destroy it in you. But Trump fumes at so-called judge after DHS suspends all actions on a travel ban as a reminder of this situation that came on. And he says, so-called judge. And I find this very fascinating through when I analyze it, and I want to tell you because I think you need to analyze it this way, things like this way, of what's not actually being done correctly, that allows them to pass right by the problem that we have, which if we fixed it would bring us a lot closer to having the type of government that is accountable, does have the things in it that we were promised, is functioning to help the people, and would avoid that we eventually may go to arms, whether that's fabricated in us as civil war, or whether we decide as a unified people to fix it, or scare the people out of the positions like they ought to be run off by other means. I don't mean threatening, I mean they'll just know that the sentiment is not in their favor and it's time to move along. There's all kinds of ways to work this out without killing people. Even the lawyers. But even so. The so-called judge. I found it fascinating that Trump didn't follow that up by actually going after the fact that the courts that are responding, and I've told you this year after year now, in particular after our 2013 court case, where this point was critical to identify a theft by the court of our case, a court of incompetent jurisdiction with a judge that was incompetent over the subject matter to try and steal our case. When he said so-called judge, I snickered and said, yeah, so-called, but you didn't go to the court itself. Why did Trump's attorneys put their case and not remove their case from the United States District Court Territorial Court in wherever they are, because I haven't heard the two that come up in the right place, and remove them from a territorial court to the Article 3 court to let everybody know the USDC courts have no competence over Article 3 matters? Why didn't they do that when he called this a so-called judge at the appellate level? It is an interesting transparency, if you will. Everyone's looking right through this. It's the first thing I key on to show you that we have a battle, we have certain things. They're talking about the rights of aliens to have right of travel to this country. That's always had a regulation on it. But look at what's passed by when you don't understand to challenge the judge. He calls the judge, Trump calls him a so-called judge, and they don't make the challenge. He just calls him as an opinion. He then, what I found fascinating, and now I want to I'll toot my horn a little bit here, and I don't know how if this will come out quite right. We'll see. I'm going to toot my horn a little bit on this point where, haven't I told you all to read get the black and white in your eyes? It's right there if you read. Now, some of it's kind of complicated, but a lot of it is just not that complicated. And you would be empowered. You'd have a word in your mouth then that's relevant to the law that is either being complied with or being not complied with, and the actor of coming contrary to is now subject to his malfeasance, giving you a remedy against these people, at least in the presentation, if you can't get it because the system is so darned corrupt, as we're seeing this battle between Trump, the executive branch, and the judicial branch coming to a head here. Let me play you quickly a little clip, and I can't go too far because I don't want to come into I don't worry about the copyright nonsense. That's why I don't do many clips that long. I don't even want to deal with it. Not worth my time. So I'm just going to play a little bit of the setup, and then we'll talk a little bit more, because I just want to show you that Trump goes right to the thing I asked you to do. And he does his analysis in front of the sheriff's conference.
Well, you don't have to be a lawyer. If you were a good student in high school or a bad student in high school, you can understand this. And it's really incredible to me that we have a court case that's going on so long. As you know, in Boston, we won it with a highly respected judge and a very strong opinion. But now we're in an area that, let's just say, they are interpreting things differently than probably 100% of the people in this room. I'd like to almost know, does anybody disagree when I read this? But I'm going to read what's in dispute, what's in question, and you'll see this. It's INA 212F 8 USC 1182F. Suspension of entry or imposition of restrictions by the President. Okay, now, this isn't just me. This is for Obama, for Ronald Reagan, for the President. And this was done, very importantly, for security, something you people know more about than all of us. It was done for the security of our nation, the security of our citizens, so that people come in who aren't going to do us harm. And that's why it was done. And it couldn't have been written any more precisely. It's not like, oh, gee, we wish it were written better. It was written beautifully. So just listen. Here's what it says. This is what they're arguing. Whenever the President finds that the entry of any aliens, okay, the entry of any aliens, or of any class of aliens, so any aliens, any class of aliens, into the United States. So the entry of people into the United States. Let's say, just to be precise, of aliens into the United States. So any time, whenever the President finds that the entry of any alien or any class of aliens into the United States would be detrimental to the interests of the United States, right? So if I find as President that a person or group of people...
So, I hope we don't have to take this long to go through, but what is he doing? He's reading the black and white. He's going through an analysis that he claims to be very clear. I want to tell you, that's what I've been telling you we need to be doing. He's going right to the black and white that these people used, and they use it derogatorily against us, and we are not fulfilling these things that are going on. And he's going through in this little thing, and I want to end it there. You can go listen. You'll have the link. He goes on and goes on and on and on about it, which is exactly what we all are supposed to be doing, so we understand what the dynamic, what the limits. You want to talk about limits in the government? This is the constraints of this government. Now, what he's not going to talk about is something that the court picked up on. And that was the question of whether or not they can review whether or not his decision is valid. It's not made up. They're saying they have a right to review how he came to the decision. And so after Trump comes out and says so-called judges and then kind of goes through the reading of the black and white and goes through his analysis, I think it was a day later or so, the Ninth Circuit steps up and beats him down with their analysis. And to me, this started, I was chuckling again. Now we're seeing the political, it's supposed to be a judicial branch and an executive branch. It's not supposed to be political. It's supposed to be in law. We're watching the political beatdown going on right here. When he insulted the judiciary who's supposed to take the high standard, they came back and said, well, we're going to show you how much power you have. We're going to deny that to you by showing we do have an interest. For me, and for those of you should have been looking in and seeing, the dogfight between the two agencies is exactly what you want so you can see the truth come out. As a story comes up to discuss this Ninth Circuit beatdown of the position of Trump to maintain the ban, to lift the ban that was lifted by the prior court. Trump's Ninth Circuit and President Trump's lies. The court in this report from the New Yorker goes through an interesting focused attack on Trump as well. I'm not legitimizing the direction from which they're attacking Trump. What I want us to look at when we see these things is how they rationalize and justify. It's not justifiable at all. How they rationalize and justify their points, and what people of a persuasion that are decentralized, left and center, right left or right, the far extremes, will take it through their paradigm. But we'll see that the court comes out to say that they have looked into Trump's actions, and this was even before for the election, and they have found that he does not tell the truth. Therefore, how can they, as the court, take what he has said as his reason, his lawful reason for his supporting his determination as the truth? And upon that question, that Trump lies, we're going to look into this, and we find that based on the procedure, the thing you've tried to do, the tool and remedy and equity that you've tried to do, which was the injunction against the lifting, we find you didn't meet the burden. So you see the standard they're applying, which was right in law, but you see them reach outside of the law, and you say, well, we're going to look at what we've noticed before, that's judicial notice, all to make a political attack. Understanding here, this court is last time I checked was a couple years ago, 71% wrong on their decisions as well. Notwithstanding what I've told you before, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals oversees territorial court decisions. They're not even actually a lawful court of review in this instance either, that Trump walked into. I'm asking why. Why didn't he remove the case from a territorial court, the USDC court, to an Article III court, the District Court of the United States? Let me go through that quickly again. The United States District Court is not the District Court of the United States. Their definition, their titles are different. The United States District Court, which makes up all but 2 of the district courts in the United States, are territorial courts. Now, I would ask you, what territory of the United States is in any state? And now we'll see the veneer that pops up that they're dealing with. The fictional territory they're talking about. But I want to go back to Article 3. If there's the United States District Courts or not, where are they? Well, if you look closely, they're district courts of the United States. The order of the words changes. And I've told you to go research 28 U.S.C. 88 to 131 and find out for yourself that this is the truth, and there's only 2 Article 3 courts and where they are. So, we have a bunch of things that are slipping under the door here that are, we're looking at a battle that we think is going on, but in fact the real battle's being evaded, actually. It's not just the so-called judge. We can have an Article 3 judge in a territorial court. That judge still doesn't have competence over the Article 3 matter in a territorial court. It's being missed by, I think, everybody. I haven't heard anybody talk about this stuff. No, so So I'm talking about like I have some authority. Well, yeah, I do, right? Remember, 2013 we sued the federal court, the territorial court. We submitted our Article 3 petition in, tried to transfer our case to to a territorial court, a different division in the district. And we said, give us your warrant in law clerk to do that. Take it from an Article 3 court to where we have it filed and move it to an Article 1 and 4 court, territorial court. We also then filed a quo warranto on the receiving judge, who was a senior judge. His classification at all shows he's relinquished the commission of the Article 3 court officer. And we said, okay, not only we want it on you, we want to know how is a senior judge and Article 3 judge competent to hear Article 3 matters, and how is the court you reside in an Article 3 court? Folks, both officers who are supposed to do the law did not respond. The burden upon them is on them, not us, once we challenge. That means they had no jurisdiction to do anything that they did. Does that invalidate the complaint? Well, absolutely not. It goes on the time by the rule. You have 5 days to dissolve this injunction, the petitioners, and the only court we have now is the one that's on time, not even before a judge, because they're not available at this point, and they wouldn't transfer after we demanded it. So now we have our case being held hostage in an Article 3 court that would be you would not think exists, but it's by the complaint the court is invoked. That the judge later comes out to try and to make a paper that he's going to claim to try and dismiss the case and then terminate the case, and there's no provision for any of that, and yet his opening statement is, I don't have jurisdiction. Now, if he doesn't have jurisdiction on our challenge, how did the Seattle judge have jurisdiction whether they challenged it or not? They're both the same status court, and the decision from this court goes to a territorial appeals court at the Ninth Circuit. And we know that because if you go to the actual Article 3 appellate court, you'll see it back in Washington, the appellate court. They stated on their website that they're an Article 3 appellate court. It's for the Federal Circuit. Now, all of you all confused, some of you, probably most of you, because you don't read what I'm telling you to let you track what I'm saying. So you can just nod your head. You're right. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying there. But see, we're a clueless society of how this has all been covered over, substituted. And we have no mass of people that I'm trying to educate. Now I understand Thomas Jefferson said so. We have to educate people, and the mass restores our liberty. That we're watching a deception right in our face with this Trump travel condition and ban on whomever he's thinking he's going to ban. Which I'll tell you, I don't have much of a problem if it's causing a trouble, because we have to have an orderly migration into the government, into this society, so that our society is not destabilized, so that those that come in understand our societal agreement on how we treat each other. Now that's all. The whole thing is on its head, but that's notwithstanding the fact that there's an orderly immigration that's supposed to happen. That with all this view and our focus on these things that are not even focusing on the point, this major judicial slapdown of Trump. I mean, to the point I heard he's going to write another executive order and fix the perceived problem, because when you read the order, it isn't what was argued by the state of Washington. So the whole thing is really messed up. But while we're focused on this story, and to my mind missing it all too, we're watching the fake news of it all. We're not understanding the underlying failures of the whole thing. And I don't know whether Trump understands this or whether it's on purpose. I don't know the guy. I don't know. I don't even want to go there. I hope he's not doing this on purpose. That'll be, again, it'll just be more terrible for most of us. But while we're all focused on the alien ban, most of you all didn't notice the domestic ban that they put on all y'all. I hear crickets on this one. I see them all protesting in the streets about maybe letting Osama, excuse me. Oh, that's the same terrorist, isn't it? Back in the country. But I didn't hear much protesting going on when the government allows the IRS to revoke your passports for unpaid taxes. I heard crickets on that one, folks. President Trump's executive order on travel may be generating big protests and be put on hold by the courts, but an IRS missive on travel and passports may not go down too well either. And I don't know about that statement because I hear nobody looking at this problem. More than a year ago, where were the people, folks? Where are you all? But you see, these are legal entities as well. These are persons liable to the tax. I've been through all this as well. We don't even know how to discuss this problem. Congress gave the IRS a new weapon to collect taxes. Tax Code Section 7345 is labeled Revocation or Denial of Passport in Case of Certain Tax Delinquencies. The law isn't limited to criminal tax cases or even cases where the IRS thinks you are trying to flee. The idea of the law is to use travel as a way to enforce tax collection. Do I need to read more? I mean, it goes on and on. It was signed in 2015. It's there, folks. Where were the protests against your free travel based on some fraudulently imposed tax liability that none of you know how to question? And those that have tried, to their credit, got beat down because they made the wrong, initiating wrong arguments by agreeing that they had authority without throwing it off first, as I tell you you need to try and do, and get on the record at least. They are the walking wounded that come to tell us fairy tales on how we're going to solve the problem. Not one of them are implementing what they talk about. None of them practice what they preach. Most all of them that I've heard use wrong interpretations of definitions and impositions because they didn't get it the first time and they're not going to get it the second time. And this goes on and the IRS rules your life and your travel. You think you're free to travel? You know, I would have thought indefinite detention on a misdemeanor would have been enough. No, they're going to put more on you all. And I heard nothing. So while this alien constraint comes on you, all taxpayers, so-called, and they beat you up if you try to argue otherwise, but you don't make a record properly, I don't think. I've never seen anybody make a proper record, as I've explained needs to be done. And how? And then how to jujitsu them into showing that when they did the mischaracterization, if they did, that's a felony. You don't even use your own martial moves here to defend yourself. That you are going to be, and if you think this is the one little thing, this is now certain tax delinquencies, you don't think that this gives them more opening of the box to go after more. And now I'm going to remind you of e-money, digital currency as the cashless society rolls on. And your acceptance of it by all the things you acquire and plug yourself into. So while everyone's complaining and we're watching the breads and circuses and the cage match that's going on between the executive and the judicial, which is all criminal in my mind, and you can say that's an opinion. I can show probably chapter and verse on the fact of this. Nobody calling out. The president saying there's a so-called judges without telling you the how, and not fighting it at all. Not even bringing up the power of that's been used for every court since 9/11. This is just national security, and we can't tell you. That's what they've been using up until now, and Trump doesn't use it today. Or a lot of signs of how they're doing things in front of your face and getting the noose around your neck a little bit tighter. The ring in your nose gets you pulled to another place. And I just found it fascinating. While everyone's, we know that's a promotion too. Lots of people are screaming around about the aliens being banned. Whether or not it's right or not, I say if you went through the process and have a green card, that is a permit that the government is, on other cases has said, the government has no right to deny now. Once you've done the things it takes to get a license or a permit, or a green card in this case, you can't just carte blanche just deny all that. You might be able to deny the new ones coming with newer restrictions, but then it's only based on the ability you have as a limited form government to do that for the purposes that's been given. But once the agency of the executive in the form of the State Department issues a green card, the president's pretty much out of it because he delegated that power for them to do that. Now, that hasn't even been brought up. I don't want to get into the analysis. There's a whole lot I don't know that I don't want to get into. I'm pointing out for us what's going on in our face is an interesting battle that exposes a whole lot, but it exposes nothing substantial that we need to know. Well, to me it is, but I don't know about all y'all, and I don't know about anybody who doesn't care, that thinks this is a lot of just that it is the circus, and so you turn away. We're in a time we have to understand how they're killing us, how they're setting us up for the fall. We have to fight what we think we know that isn't so. Absolutely. It has to go beyond just an opinion. If you don't agree with me, you have to come with a proof. What comes out of your mouth or off the keyboards means nothing to me anymore. That's clear. The fake news tells us about that, but you notice I said it's notice. They're telling all this is fake news as far as I can tell if you want to put the label on it, but it's noticing us something. I'm asking you, are you aware of what the actual notice is to us? Can you articulate it, how this is the fraud, the apparent fraud that it is, and that maybe you have a place to jump in to expose that? If you don't care, I don't know what to say. I'm not here to talk to people that don't care. And where are we going with this? As I pause to try and get all the people that are going to argue with me, give them time in their mind to argue with me some more. Folks, I understand the dynamics going on. But I have a broadcast problem. I don't like dead air either. So I'll give a little bit of space. Excuse me, I have to look over at something. We did have a little bit of problem last week, and I don't know where that was. If you drop out, please let me know. Where are we going with all this convolution? And you can't get out now. Now, they're talking about the borders. Pretty soon it's coming down to the states, and then it's going to come down to your cities. And it's going to be like those movies that I don't necessarily watch that I've seen little trailers about here and there over my life, where you get locked into towns and you can't get out. Invasions happen. All of a sudden this week as well, here where Trump is saying, no, you're going to agree that the IRS has the ability to come after you. We're in the same point of the sheriff's conference. Trump agrees that you should lose your stuff under the allegation of a crime done due to a seizure, asset forfeiture. That's not okay. He actually threatens a senator in the state of Texas for considering that. Tongue in cheek? I don't think so. That all in the same week that they say they're bringing up the idea to notice to you that for right now, certain tax delinquencies, the noose around apparently everyone, unless you know kind of what to say, and then because you find you haven't figured out you're in an occupied territory and these people are occupiers and they mean you harm, the organized criminal syndicate is working your life, you may not be able to escape even if you do have a word in your mouth. And part of that is because there's not enough of us. Thank you for the feedback on that audio. Thank you, appreciate it. That we move in our ignorance with things and harms transparent to us while the system continues on its plan. And I tell you, the one with the plan is probably going to win. That in this same time when they're starting to explain that you're going to be locked out of travel and you're going to be locked out of your funds and the e-currencies that are coming down, the cashless society that they told us was coming, where did they tell us that was coming but in a document that was written purportedly 2,000 years ago in something called the Bible? And I see all these people now writing about all this stuff that I started to learn back in the 70s through the 90s, in earnest in the 90s for sure. That all of a sudden, attorneys no less are writing today and exposing to you the problem. And they're touted as the heroes now for explaining it. And I'm wanting to know, where the heck were you back when we were finding this out in the 90s and being called the ones that were nuts? Like those tinfoil hat wearers. Which turns out to be the so-called conspiracy theorists. Where were all these late-day orators about these problems that we've been living under, at least for my awareness, happened in the 70s to the 90s? But no, we have this herd following on the next one that props themselves up or is propped up for us to go and listen to them. that in the same time of the notice to you that you're going to be constricted on your external travel, and I've kind of written off all that stuff for myself, and I don't get into the American national stuff when you go and work out for a passport, and it's not going to maybe matter anyway. You're supposed to have the right and freedom of travel. Up until the 90s, it was pretty clear. Now it's really been foggy, and then since 9/11, forget it. And I heard crickets. That now they're back on track again. They brought it out back in like 2012. They broached it before, but then they started to come out with the real statements. I think it was 2012. Oh, about the time when the NDAA hit, the indefinite detention. Oh, that's an interesting coincidence. Oh, it didn't mean nothing to see here. But it's coming up again this week. It's time to create a mega cities combat unit. So at the same time they're telling you you're going to be constrained of your movement in certain instances, which I will tell you is not limited at some point, and certainly not under the indefinite detention, they're now coming out to remind you, if you will, this thing about your mega cities are needing military interest. The notice to us now is the military has been planning to deal with megacity problems. And again, these articles are really educational. I can't really even do them justice in some regard without, prepping them and reading them and then discussing it. In their own right, they give us a direction. And they explain the condition that's been on us and what's coming on us, and the fact that they also target a 2030 deadline date to be prepared for. I know I reference what when they're talking megacities, I'm referencing what when I get to the 2030 date. I'm referencing the migration plan into all your nations, and the fact that the Stack 'em and Pack 'em Agenda 21 2030 plan is to stick you into smart cities. It's the very mega city they've been planning for you to go to from the rural areas, to kick you off the land so you can't produce for yourself. Make you totally dependent on this interlocked smart society. Not so intelligent, but smart as heck. The technocratic urbanites. That the military is already planning for your forced migration there. Calling them megacities. That they're planning to be able to do whatever they need to do to quell the other thing that they're planning, and they're already on the table with this one, the civil war, the civil dissonance and division that they're going to foment to require them to be there. All coming in the same week. It's just fascinating to me how they told us. Military contingencies in megacities and sub-megacities were again coming together. This one actually was a monograph written and referred to from 2016 of this last December. Why are all these coming up at the same time is always amazing to me, the coincidence. We certainly see it. What does it mean? Well, I tie it to some other things, and now it means something. I don't know what more to say about that it sounds like it's out there. Oh, I don't live in a mega city, I don't have to worry about it. Well, they're going to make it so expensive and difficult that you're going to be forced to go do something. And if they start doing what's going on in India, folks, where they're removing bills from circulation and then making you get new ones, and then also at the same time they make it impossible for you to do small level interactions in your private contract in the United States of America would require that you have the ability to do. Notwithstanding the producers being able to deal with each other in what they produce as also having a medium of exchange. It's not electronic. They force you into electronic change-making. Talk about the money changers. And there's a profit taken on the electronic supplier of that service to the local people in their daily business meetings, all tying you in. If you don't think all of this starts to work out against you, you're missing a big deal here. In this other article, urbanization is one of the most important mega trends of the 21st century. Consequently, the possibility of U.S. military involvement in a megacity or sub-megacity is an eventuality that cannot be ignored. After elucidating the nature of urbanization and developing a topology in terms of smart, fragile, and feral cities, we give consideration to the kinds of contingencies that the U.S. military, especially the Army, needs to think about and prepare for. Understanding the city as a complex system or organism is critical and provides the basis for changes in intelligence, recruitment, training, equipment, operations, and tactics. So they look at the city as an organism. That should give you a whole clue of what they're going to attack when they want to bring you into servitude. Now, first of all, they don't have to do much more than take away your functioning monetary system, which is all digital, and then they go after your water supply, and they go after whatever electricity you have. You see what they do. I tell you, the microcosm of Gaza, the open-air prison there, is the macrocosm that you don't know about exists in the United States, and they're going to put that wall up to prove it. So, I just want to point out, there's notice here. They're already planning to have you inside the cities. Some of us are going to be old enough not to miss it. This is your future, and they're planning to use military force in order to keep the peace, which is not. You see what happens when the military gets involved. The military was never meant as a domestic tool of enforcement, ever. And so you can disregard all this and we can throw our hands up or whatever, that what our decisions being made today are allowing this to come in. This report is a PDF you can get, Mega Cities and the United States Army. I just wanted to read a couple of things, just the headings that they highlight on these documents. Executive summary. Now, there's just fascinating stuff written in this. Crowded megacities beset by poor living conditions. This is your future, folks. This is planned, otherwise they wouldn't be talking this way. Why would in the United States of America would you be talking about poor living conditions unless it's planned on you, like Flint water? Poor living, or stack them in passive densities, and stack them in patent apodments. That's going to be roomy, folks. I'm telling you already. Megacities, they're already planning for megacities with poor living conditions. Periodic rises in price of commodities, water shortages, the unresponsive municipal services, while will be fertile petri dishes for the spread of both democracy and radicalization, even as regimes will be increasingly empowered by missiles and modern, outwardly focused militaries. Folks, do you have a rocket? Do you have a missile? No, but you're going to be getting all these other things that your standard of living goes down through austerity into being poor living conditions, while the government, military, knows democracy means mob rule. And they tie mob rule to radicalization. This is a plan for your cities, folks. And it's not going to be limited. They said sub-med megacities, and then it goes into the rural areas as they try to divide that down because they don't want you producing for yourself. We're already seeing this. Is what the end I see is the land disposal imposition on producers. And I'm going to suggest something to you folks. That is the chasm that, given a people that understand it, that the government can't force you into digital anything. Because as producers, we always have a connection to a land that does not understand digital. We understand the old way, the way that got us here before the usurper, the stakeholder, took over in the last 40. You have to understand how this worked. They actually got their handhold only in the last 40 years. Strategic significance. The word strategic is really important here in utilizing it based off of the method that's used in the UN, what we call Agenda 21, how they go about it, what they do. They make strategic plans. This word is in here. The second heading is strategic significance. The quote, failing to prepare for military operations is dangerous. In dangerous megacities could leave a future president without the means to do something that he or she considers to be in the national interest. And isn't that what Trump actually said in the bill to keep them out? It was in the national interest, and then he doesn't use that as a reason when he comes to the court. But this is about, the military is about keeping the commander-in-chief with an option in a cities that they plan to be densely populated and plan to make sure are going to be living in austerity, where they can manage the sufferance of the people within those areas. And then the outlying areas, just go out and you look at where in Syria, how they attack the outlying areas where is. And you're watching the dynamic that's going to start happening in every mega city as this trigger gets pulled. This is a plan, folks, I guess this is our notice. It's coming in the news today. Now, along with all this coming along is you have my voice, we have our blogs, we have the Blogcaster, as I called it, you can see my content, you can also hear my voice, and so I have a blog discussion, not much discussion more than it is the content that you can see that I'm coming from, so you can check what my words are. I really like when people would do that, and then you have your own inclusions and your own observations, and we can get maybe a short dialogue on some of that, knowing we all are kind of busy, but having a consistent mind about this is going to be helpful. To see other people's perspectives is going to be helpful. But again, in the military operation, communication is all key. And so before the war actually starts ringing out, they take you down before they have to fire a shot. We see this digital world that we've been plugged into is already controlled by the military, this interwebs, the internet. And so we also have to protect against these provisions, and why I've been asking anybody that's of the mind, start coming up with alternatives, start getting into independent encrypted communications. They're going to use this P2P digital money against us. I can just see it. I was listening to, I think it was Corbett, making some comments about a guy in India. A billion or so people being the guinea pigs, folks, for how this is going to implement. If they can do that to a billion, in the United States they do it, but they find states that are just sizable enough that they can do it without too much imposition and test their pilot programs. That's what pilot programs do. They're doing this to a whole nation now, bringing them into cashless society, causing all kinds of trouble. And then I got it to us down in the streets. How do we make change? And they take that away from us. And then I was thinking even further, well, how do I make a deal with you? How do I have what is my medium now? If we're not prepared about that, we don't get, again, have your states making coin, right? As they constitutionally have right to do, you're going to have missed the boat. So we order that we make coin for ourselves as they go to digital. We can order that for ourselves. That this digital world is hackable beyond measure. It's not controlled. Our communications are hackable. They have the switch, if you will. They can block us. Like last week, I still can't figure out how I dropped off. There's no reason. One line went, and the one line to Spreaker was fine and solid. The one that went over to RLM got cut out a couple times. How does that happen? Doesn't make any sense to me, but it did. They're going to do this wide. In fact, I was just Cliff High has a video, talks about this G-spot. It's Google having the central control and censorship of all of our websites. They just stop listing you when you fit a certain algorithm potential, and his suggestions are linguistically related to how you can help to subvert that whole thing. So I won't have the link to that. Find it, Cliff High and the G-spot. Find out, listen to what he says on this. That it adds a new nuance to how we're going to combat this, that this is the war. Even the digital world, they're going to stick you in that digital place. They're going to give you digital currency, and then you're going to be susceptible to the hack. Not only do you have the government looking at everything you do and control of what you do, they take away your private right of contract, your ability to pay for anything, or they make it difficult, if nothing else. And then you try to communicate, and then this might happen. Thousands of hacked WordPress sites abused to infect millions of visitors. They have a way into your stuff that we're going to be using to try and talk to each other about. A large number of WordPress websites are compromised in the last 2 weeks with a new malware campaign spotted in the wild. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to really bear down. I just want to get us knowledgeable that we are really vulnerable in lots of areas. These WordPress sites are very interesting. They are content management systems. They really are cool. I think RLM has its foundation on WordPress, but they're attackable. And so there's this new malware, a WordPress malware active visitor tracking campaign. Very interesting, but there's one thing that you have to understand in most of all this. These malwares just don't get into your system by magic. They have to get your consent by you absently clicking on links that take you to places, in this case, that lets you download something that then attacks your system. You have a part in your own defense. And it's partly why I don't talk much about what I have, what I do. I'll just tell you about certain things that are going on. But you have to develop your own strategies. Look around. There's people that do stuff you can watch, and you can do it yourself. In fact, we had without getting too much, we had a little problem on a different site, completely different, that got infiltrated somehow. We still haven't figured out how that happened. So now we have to look and see where it didn't do anything. Nobody went anywhere. It was really just a sub-promotion proxy that they installed, but we had to root it out. And so when we get into this digital world, I just want to remind you, your life is absolutely hackable. You have to be able to respond. So just to and I haven't scrutinized this at all, but there's this little plugin you can get on these websites. For those of you that have WordPress or will be getting it, there's plugins you can use. I use a few on this Jefferson Mining District has a sub-site which uses WordPress. And that thing it just got attacked. We had like 30 bots hit that thing just this morning. Interestingly, this time all from China. And so but we're survive. I mean, it's just a bot attack. They tried to get in and log in, and they tried to do all kinds of things, and I've got constraints. So what this issue is, this malware, is that it hijacks your page, puts links that your visitors will come to, that gets you over to their stuff, and when you click on their link, it then installs on their system, their virus, okay? And so there's a scanner. You'll get a link to this for this Securi company that has a module of protection, and you can if you're kind of new to this, it'll scan your website for it. If you look at the articles, it'll tell you what folders to look for. The point is that for those of us that utilize this technology to get the word out to the masses, it's going to be under attack in many different ways. And I guess I'm asking those of you capable that may be in different places in your life that still have a talent to do certain things, maybe turn your attention to help us defend ourselves from these things. So that's the attack from the outside, as they get us into this digital cashless society, as they only tell us what they want us to see, and the rest of it goes right by us. It's pretty fascinating to watch, actually. It really is fascinating to watch how much we're oblivious to it. And I don't put myself outside of that. There's a lot I'm sure I'm oblivious to. What I can see has made looking at us people, as us, what we do amongst ourselves, pretty an interesting review. Maybe some people don't care about that. It just interests me because I believe we have a thing to do, and those vulnerabilities are really crippling us. In a way, it makes people really look kind of foolish to me, in a way, without sounding too judgmental or arrogant about it. When I see people doing the same wrong, and they won't listen, and they won't go do the better study, and they continue the same meme, I just start wondering, well, are you an agent for the other side? Are you just that dense? Either way, it's not helping anybody. It's certainly, most importantly, it's not helping you. Not any one of you, but those that do this. It's astonishing, actually. So we go plug ourselves in, we get all these, the Internet of Things, we hook up, they're all hackable, we agree to that somehow. Like, I've been kind of pretty settled on not getting Skype, and I know it's hurt me quite a bit, but I still won't get it. And it keeps out coming, why we shouldn't. I'm even now starting to see the P2P might have a weakness in the fact of, I can't even explain it right quite yet. It flashed in my mind that even P2P that's being promoted by people, the so-called open source, it actually is hackable. It also occurs to me more and more, as I keep asking you, listen, you got to help, if you can, help get the word out about the broadcast. Get other networks to take it on for 2 hours, or get in touch with me on how we can do that. I don't get many people at all talking about that. Go ahead and like the sites you visit that have this contact. Nobody. The Internet is actually this confining thing. As much as the world is available to this broadcast and anybody else that is on it with a blog or however hackable it is, we are isolated by the very controllers that will only direct others to you and don't know that you're there. For as expansive as my reach is globally here, from behind the woodshed, and literally, I am not found by anybody that doesn't know to look for me. And this is an interesting trap they've got us in. We think we're talking to everybody. And then I find out, no, there's like these little cliques that show up. And then there's the people that attack other cliques. It's just like some high school thing. And no, nothing actually functions. It's a divisive tool as well, and maybe more so than the tool to unify us in a direction, to get rid of our nonsense and let's pull ourselves together on the things that are actually truly important without all the fairy tales. That we plug ourselves in, we buy these smart things. These are the weapons against us, silent weapons for quiet wars, folks. And we have another thing, Vizio pays big after accusations, just the accusations apparently by this title, after accusations of smart TVs spying on owners. After it was revealed that Vizio smart TVs were spying on owners without their consent, the manufacturer has now settled $2.2 million, deleting all data to avoid privacy invasion charges. If you think that's the truth. And only by consent. So what did we hear before last week? They get your consent, but you plug it in. Apparently that wasn't in their terms of agreement. I guess they were feeling so guilty they didn't want to let you know how many times that Skype people just get on Skype with them, knowing that not only Microsoft but third parties can get all their conversations and their chats and the decoding if it's encrypted. Why? Because that's what Microsoft was doing, getting Skype. They had to get that encryption key. And it reminds me of an article went back through here this last week, reminding me that we had talked about even so a year ago or so, maybe more, that all your phone encryption keys were stolen by the government. Right? So keep plugging yourself in and keep thinking that it's okay and keep making it not important because you're not a criminal. That day I told you, folks, I told you how that's going to be set up. You're going to be named a criminal. You're already named a taxpayer, and if you don't pay your taxes and you don't engage with that beast, you're not going to go anywhere, but you think that's okay. You just keep your head down a little bit, maybe it'll go away. And yet the facts are otherwise. Now, so for this Vizio payment, I went right to the FTC, got the website. You can see what the FTC says about how they did that. I would say read between the lines because they're saying that they're only paying because they didn't tell you. It's kind of like the EPA and the municipalities. If a municipality dumps sewage into the river and doesn't tell the EPA, it's major fines. If they dump the sewage in the river and they tell the EPA within the time required by the Clean Water Act, it's okay, it's cool. Oh, it was just an accident. And this is really what we're going on. This world is based in due process. What have I told you, folks? Here's a test. Those of you taking notes, you can put your pen down and think about this real quick. What have I told you? It's due process is what? It's 4 words. Notice, opportunity, time, and place. That's all due process ends up being in the most summary sense. Once you're given notice, you have the opportunity to react accordingly or respond. Acting accordingly has two views. You either act because you're autonomous from it, or you have to act now to either throw it back off or be part of it. There's always these divisions that have been created for us, these little like tar babies. You get touched by it, you leave a mark, and you can't now go anywhere without leaving that mark. And we have to become a lot more intelligent about this. So the FTC confirms by their report, read between the lines, seems to me, as long as they give you notice, you have the option to not plug in. Now, I'm not speaking to the fact when you don't plug in, they still beat you down, but that's another point. That's another problem. That's the ongoing problem of the cluelessness of the masses that was supposed to check and preserve our liberty, isn't it? And again, I'm not talking about Second Amendment having to go there because I don't think that's possible. Not right now. Not when you see nobody in this country that I know of is ready with a crew with a bunch of rocket launchers on their shoulder. I see them all over in ISIS. I see them over in Syria. They don't even have a constitution with the right to bear arms. Do they care? No, somehow we really care. And we were supposed to have those weapons to stop the very oppression that is upon us now, and we didn't. This hacking condition and this hackability and the knowledge of this now is so prevalent, and people are trying to scramble. And if you're not scrambling now, you may be missing this bus and this boat. If we don't engage how we have to, we're not going to have the capacity. As I said, even my electronics background is not, and being out of it for decades, certainly has not kept up with the technology. And my minimal programming background, I certainly haven't been able to keep up with the programming technology to make me even close to where I need to be. I'm just a point and clicker now, and I got to make my thoughts about it. I can tell you, having to do website security, IT, if I can say the security side, has started to re-engage that muscle to have to think like you have to think in order to be better at it. And if we're not engaging those muscles right now, we're done. We have no clue. No different than people that come to me, it's really their life is pretty much destroyed and they're still looking for the way out, and I can only offer what I can, formidable as it might be, in face of the biggest corruption you've got. You all folks, you don't know the corruption in life. You just talk about it. You don't know about it. You got to see it in the face of people. And then you might start to understand. You're looking at an impossible condition, and then I sit in there and I say, you can still prevail. And they can. We can. It can be done. And then I hear people argue with me, and I hear crickets. That Republicans are reportedly using self-destructing message apps to avoid leaks. Now, we know this all come out of the election cycle, that now they're trying to turtle up and figure out how to keep themselves protected in their own communications, which on a governmental level is very problematic. And we kind of know that because of the Freedom of Information Act. All official business with the government is supposed to be recorded and accessible, notwithstanding any national security or limitations by, classification, the classifying. So we have the government people now using these apps. If they're using these apps, maybe you should consider it, all right? And they got some interesting ones. They're not, that stuff's not unknown. It's just that people are starting to go to it. And that tells me, for us, if we make ourselves important, it's going to be more and more difficult to get information. The very information that WikiLeaks was exposing was newfound information, confirming more than anything else. It wasn't new to me and those of us that have been studying this. It just confirms the fact of the condition that we're up against, that the access to that information, however we got it, however it might be described, was what makes the difference. Information is power here. Again, we had the ability to get the information, and the power became we could make decisions based on that now. And you saw that power in the people was able to change the tide. It appeared from what looked to be a set in stone outcome in the election to something that was just a big surprise. Although I stated this whole thing was, along the reality game show. I predicted this would be the horse race. The guy Clinton would come around the back, running around. She'd be in the lead in the back 40, and then Trump would be coming up hard and fast. And at the end, it would be a win by a nose for Trump. That was predicted long before all this nonsense happened. It's because the reality game show predicts that there's going to be this fantastical script that's going to play out. Now, it just so happens that view pretty much was accurate. And notwithstanding anything that was happening underneath. The point is that the information we got in the dynamic of all this was made us powerful to make the decision, at least as we're told, that it changed the outcome of a political race. Not deciding the outcome of that provision. That now the government is now going to become even more constrained, and our ability to get information, more information, and maybe the information we need may be being cut off right now. In fact, some of my work is to figure out how do you develop Freedom of Information Act requests or open records requests if you're in the state. They're two different provisions. How do you make them so that you get the information, not just the information, but how do you get it so that it best serves you when you're dealing with multiple agencies? And so that's one of the things you have to kind of consider. It's not just making a request. There's a strategy behind how you're doing it. In other words, if you think someone's trying to hide information from you, you've got to figure out a back door to that agency that might expose that there was something that should have been produced, and that gives you your standing to do the appeal. So there's a strategy for all of this. And it's just, you're not going to do it by listening to me. You're not going to appreciate it by listening to me. You're going to only start to understand it and appreciate it by really rolling up your sleeves and doing something. And in a way, it's really empowering to see that our opinions are useless, and even our opinions are useless when we do the function of it. I was just explaining that last night. Forget our opinions. Forget your emotions. You got to put those aside yourself. You now have to go after this thing. And the best analogy I have is you become the investigative reporter to your own case, and you divorce yourself from yourself. You get away from what you think you know, and you have to then put everything in evidence. Absolute proof in your hand. None of these ideas that we get. I see my flash in my mind all kinds of explanations, like the discussion about where the Fed was created in the dead of night when everybody went home. No, it's a lie. You can see it right in the law. In fact, I have it somewhere. I think I might get to that. Do I have it here? Anyway, but we're told a whole lot of tales, and we go down and they're the wrong thing that we take our action on. So let me bring up, maybe touch a few of you that don't think that you could be blamed for something. Even when you want to be anonymous, this information gathering is so important. This big data is so critical to this whole function of this technocratic imposition that they are working day and night now using artificial intelligence to figure out how to overcome identifying you. And then my view on this is going to be a little bit more skeptical on that statement about just seeing who. Can I take a pixelated picture and unpixelate it to see who the pixelation was hiding? Has been successfully done, and I'm here to say that I don't think that's really the object. Along the lines that the wife was looking for a rice cooker, the husband was looking for a backpack, and the son was interested in the marathon bombing, the local cops show up on their door knocking, "Why are you going to build a bomb?" Is my problem with this real-life CSI, so-called, and this is what they promote to us, Google's new AI system unscrambles pixelated faces. You've known, and I got to describe this a little bit, you know the pictures that have all little squares and stuff that you can't really tell who's there. You know that it appears to be a face with eyes and you can't really make it out. Well, this AI program takes those very pixelated pictures and actually, they claim, makes a picture so you can identify who was, at least their face, not necessarily who, that it's usable to be put in a database. So you cannot be anonymous, okay? So this is another thing that I put out there just easily. That's why I just tell you, I'm just too ugly for pictures, okay? That's why I do radio. Let's put it that way. Just leave it that simple, okay? You can't pixelate. You can just take my voice. You can cut it all up. You can make me say stuff. I already know that this is possible. I've done it myself as far as editing videos, and you need to get to the point. You edit audio as well, so you try to do it as seamless as possible, and you end up truncating a 15 or 20-minute speech to the 3 minutes you need for your video. All right, that kind of stuff, that honest, trying to pass through the message that was made instead of all the stuff that was in between you didn't need. Well, what about this idea here? They can do this. They take a pixelated picture, and then they're going through a process at the other end. They show a picture. Well, what if I told you when you look at it, I want you to look at this when you get on the broadcast, for those of you that will, I ask you to go to this thing. It's on The Guardian. And you look at the first picture. It's all squares. You can't make it out. Second one, you almost see a face. And then the third one, I look at the first, at least the woman. I say, well, now how did they get from step 2 to step 3? And that caused me to have the idea they can make those pixelated pictures you can't know who is back there. They can make it look plausibly like anybody in the third step and say that's what they're doing. If they can do that, they can place you wherever they need as well. Was my take on this story. The notice is they can do it. I'm suggesting that's a cover for the fact they can do it to anyone. So this deception that goes on, the preparation of your mind to accept this thing, the fact that you are just locked in like to Facebook and all your pictures, none of you have anything to hide, and some of you might even pixelate, most of you don't. And even those that now that can this stuff is so important that they can now unpixelate you to see, and I'm suggesting maybe that's not the truth. Maybe they can unpixelate to anyone if they want to. And I'll remind you, remember, Israeli science or whatever they did back when, years ago, told us they can reproduce DNA. They can reproduce blood. They can reproduce all kinds of identity and put you somewhere. I don't want you to feel paranoid. I'm trying to suggest to you, you're going into a battlefield that that the military is planning for your future poor existence, and you may become someone that they don't like talking, and they're going to have their way to deal with you. As I think I saw in the chat room, yes, I have as little a profile as I possibly can and still get the word out. Doesn't mean I'm afraid. It just means that there's things that do happen. I'm only being able to protect against what has happened to me in the past. And maybe what I can anticipate. Certainly these are giving me information. If you don't think things can happen to you, I'm here to tell you that they can. And if you can't trust me when I say and you always argue with me, then you're not going to listen anyway. I don't want to make you afraid. I want you to be made aware that they create stuff and then they pass it as the truth has been my main theme. Challenge authorita, folks, everywhere and every way. Again, let me remind you, the judge, that Trump's not attacking as a so-called judge. He is a so-called judge, but why didn't he attack him on the law about it? Why didn't he attack the court as being incompetent as in the establishment for the subject matter? Why don't they do this? No, they pop up these straw issues, these straw characters. You're looking at a fiction thinking they're real. You don't even know where the fiction goes and begins. Multidimensional fictions, nested Russian dolls, and I'm not blaming Putin. I guess I should say better. I'm really trying to get my Russian alphabet back. It's really difficult when my mind doesn't want to work that way, but it's kind of neat to be able to read Russian and slowly get it back. And there's certain pronunciations that you do, because if you don't do that, you're not saying it right. And if you're not saying it right, someone you talk to that understands that doesn't know what you're talking about. Wow, that's back to language, and it's linguistically accurate. It has to be accurate. But science can be wrong here. The facts can be wrong. They can lie left and right, and it's all justified under the cover of what? National security. The need of national security. The very thing that Trump didn't actually use after he said that was the reason he didn't use it before the courts. It's national security, and we're on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. Slap, slap back. But TSA's own files show doubtful science behind its behavior screening program. Talk to me loud, partly because I've heard a lot of people, and a couple of people I know, being involved with a TSA shakedown. And remember, there's that gentleman, and I apologize for not knowing, because I think he does a good service. I talked about it and had a link on the Blogcaster before and talked about it. He's doing civil liberties issues around TSA studies, and he's got actually some stuff on his website. I did find it. I apologize for not going back and getting it for us today. You can track him down. But he talks about these things, and I went back to his blog page and found some more interesting information. This spoke to that very well. TSA's own files show doubtful science behind its behavior screening program. This was, I think, off The Intercept. It says, newly released documents from the Transportation Security Administration appear to confirm, I think it can be confirmed, you have to do that yourself, the concerns of critics who said that the agency's controversial program that relies on body language, appearance, and particularly behaviors to select passengers for extra screening in airports has little basis in science and has led to racial profiling, if in the minimum. I won't read anything more. If this is the case, since this is the case, I want for all of you all that are listening and want to take up a cause, in any cause, it doesn't have to be against TSA, when you find some proof that this so-called science is really scienceology, science pocus, it's conservation or terrorism science, it's all based to voice the agenda, this is evidence to show that there's no basis. In fact, every decision made by these regulatory agencies is arbitrary and capricious, at least. If not, when it's done against rights that you have to interfere, aren't felonies under state law, not federal. You can go federal too, but you've got to start in the state. That when you see this, that their science is doubtful, that puts the burden on them if you bring it up. If you don't bring it up, it means nothing. In fact, I just saw someone sent me a document, one of my colleagues, and they sent me this paper that was talked about some government official talking about this distinction between the District of Columbia and the states, and the legislation. How do you know when the legislation is specific to the district and not and the states, or separate, or both? And they gave this mealy-mouthed discussion. What was very interesting is, in capital letters, in a notice right above the signature, it said, well, this question's really irrelevant because most people don't challenge the underlying legitimacy of the law. And I highlighted that, sent it back to my colleague, and said, here's what if you do challenge it? Then what's the answer? This is the same continuing thing I try to tell you everywhere. If TSA, we see evidence, documents that are issued by the TSA show that they cannot substantiate so-called science, And it is about behavior screening. That's all they want. This is what the agenda is about. They want your behavior correct. So they're consistently telling you and telegraphing your future about if you want to see, if you could see all this. But this is evidence for you, and this would be evidence, an example of what you can do, and I'm explaining to you here how you use it. Not just that this is the news I'm talking about, the notice. No, I'm here to tell you that this is all evidence for those of you, and this particular one was travel, those of you want to go travel and the travel ban and how they're interfering with you, and I heard crickets up until now. Now, if you needed proof, there's more proof that the basis for their discussion to stop you or cause you to act has no foundation. Its substantiation is arbitrary capricious. Now let's go to the standard. And this is only off the top of my head. Well, I'll ask a question. What is any regulation, what's the standard upon the imposition of a regulation? Short pause, answer. The least minimally invasive. So now we get to the point of the standard for that, determining the least minimally invasive intrusion that the regulation would impose to fulfill the objects. That comes under scrutiny now and ultimately questioned because they have no basis for that either, which means everything that they do, anything they define and demand is not actually legitimate. It's unlawful. And now I'm actually feeling bad now that I didn't record or get copy of that website, that guy, the Blogcaster page. I wish I could, the name might came to my name. It might be Corbett, but not James Corbett. But anyway, it's incorrect. There's a guy who does this, and he has a whole list of things that he now has compiled in the middle of his page that you need to see, and this directly apply. What I'm telling you directly applies to a couple of the things he has in his list on how you challenge these people. Now, I say this is TSA, but then I extend it. If you can understand what I've just put, what I said in practice, apply it to just TSA, and take that method and approach, you can apply that to any regulatory agency, including cops, including the courts. You start to look at what they're supposed to do instead of what you're told they're supposed to do. You stop taking the word of the experts because it's all fake news. It's all actually a fraud. And it's a fraud in a way that comes under official authority that deprives you of your right of travel, your right to do anything, the right to be left alone. Oh, that's not a fundamental right in society. Well, we'll have to see about that. If the people are sovereign, you're only given the limitation. Did I say you can take away my right to be left alone? I'm invoking it. Whatever you can develop, folks, that's out there. Who are they to say anyway? We've lost our ability to put the word in our mouth that defeats these people that are coming under a color of authority to destroy us, which is a felony. A criminal's coming against you. It makes sense when I put it in that regard, I would hope. Newly released documents is evidence, folks. You just got to qualify, get them certified, and put the point forward. That's what you do everywhere. It's all about the written evidence is in writing, not the lead, not even the lead out of a pencil. Certainly not out of the barrel of a gun, as we heard in the court case that I talked about, Kansas versus Colorado, 1907. And I showed you right there. If you notice what they say, once you don't have a resort to the courts, you're in civil war again. You don't have a country. But right there it says, without the courts, we are nothing. And therefore, all we have is the courts. And as I've shown you through our court case, we invoked a court that doesn't exist in the certain occupation, but does exist under constitutional law, which stood against the interference. And that's how we're dealing in an unseen condition that we invoke and insist on, and the rules are there to protect it. What we're going to run into is that we're so infiltrated and surrounded, there's not going to be many people that recognize that, and then the cluelessness of the masses is certainly not going to back you up. And so you have to be very certain about your steps, and that can only come not from me telling you. I'm directing you where to go, where I can, when I can, as I know. You need to go do the black and white reading like Trump did early on. I'm going to read it right out of the law. It's right here. This is what it says. Now, there's a more full analysis about that, but he went to the black and white, and he pitched his position, he pitched his deal that way, is what I tell you to do in every instance. Otherwise, you're just crickets. Just crickets. You're making a lot of noise and not really doing much. In a battlefield that requires that you stand up and defend yourself and possibly others around you, I can't see how you wouldn't want to do that either. I mean, like people come to me with destroyed. I can't turn them away. I have to give some of what I know. It may not be even all they need. It may be the tip of the iceberg for their problem, but I can't just turn them away. I'll go away. No, I have to engage a few hours of my time, and I hope I put them in a better place, and I hope I fortify some action for them so they can protect themselves. Otherwise, they're going to be run down by these criminals, this organized criminal syndicate that we call government that's really not. Remember, it's not government you're up against. It's a corporate structuring that you work under governance. You're already living Agenda 2030 or Agenda 21. You're already living the usurped life. You don't even know it. You'll argue against it. You'll talk about it. You'll condemn it. You're not condemning government. You don't even know that. You don't even know like the word, oh boy, I can go off on this. I better not. I want to do a different type of study maybe some other time. I'll go to the word statist. When people were to understand what they're actually saying, it blows open the weakness of their knowledge, the weakness of their authority. They become authorita. It also shows the weakness why we tie in how they don't understand what I'm saying about anarchy. No context, no understanding, no future past, if I can say it, the past that instructed us to what we're looking at today. And they're doing this by giving us wrong information, and we absorb it as true, like Valentine's Day. Oh, I'm giving my love. I'm going to court my loved one with flowers, and you're actually just passing on giving her the gift of, or him the gift of the flowers, is giving the gift that you're putting on the grave of the saint that was martyred. Well, that's real lovely. So they control us in the information. The information is money as well. They control us in how they cause us to be vulnerable, how we can't protect ourselves, and again, how we can, if I can just use my small example I'm not that knowledgeable, but I've been paying a little bit of attention. Despite the dozens, hundreds actually, of attacks that we get from bots apparently on a WordPress site, whatever I've put together so far has not exposed a vulnerability. And I guess, so it took some energy and it takes some focus, and yeah, you got to keep track of it. It's one more thing. It like owns you. It's one more thing, another pin you have to juggle. But it's the decisions that you make, and we've made it, I've decided it's valuable enough to have to juggle that extra pin to let those that might want to know the information that's available through that effort available. And these are decisions that we have to take on if we choose to care about us and others around us. And it's a gamble. We don't know that anybody actually takes it on. I don't see much effort around accepting this information. It's not really the much effort. It's the little effort that I see coming through, every once in a while coming through my email, every once in a while coming as I see through a forum referencing information and properly discussing the content. Very important to make sure that it's always the proper. So we have these vulnerabilities. A very interesting thing came out. I remember we were talking about cashless society earlier, and them tapping us for the e-side and controlling these things, and when they do that, we don't see the silent oppression that comes with it. We don't understand from hearing the stories unless we're told. When you make your bills bigger, you have lesser change to give to people, or none at all. You can't deal with people then on a private level to make change. I mean, on simple purchases, those are gone. We don't even understand this. And then all of a sudden we don't understand. That develops a business for someone to actually profit more from you by going, they offer the change that the system imposed on you by taking away the bills that made change. Why I suggest to y'all, get a coin that's lawful money at the time, regardless of whether they recognize face value. Put your value in the store of weight and measure and durability. You really have to have it's planned. You're going in rural or countryside. You're going to have exchange methods that are trustable between all of you, and it's going to have to be in the hand. That's another thing the government can't produce. The undead don't have a hand. They can't give you a hand, folks. There's nothing like a hand up. So there's a flesh and blood. In fact, I was just talking to someone. Well, how do we prove title to our own son and daughter? Well, you got the proof in your blood. Government can't do that. I mean, do you go and suck all the blood out your baby to get the proof? No. You put the burden on them to prove that they have the blood. And they can't. So that's a fraud on the complaint right there, and a mischaracterization and a defamation for the purposes of gaining control, for the purposes of putting us into using our oppressed state to against us further. Our poverty states, less than ability to fight, is a poverty state. They put us into that poverty state, take advantage, and then they force us, oppress us into a state of peonage. If you go look at these words under federal law, they're all monster felony crimes. And yet the government acts as if they are normal, and because no one calls this stuff out. And even when they do, it's going to get even tougher because there's just not enough of us coming to support those the right way. And I say the right way as I flashes in my mind. The Bundy trials I see lots of people doing lots of statements. I don't see anybody doing the right thing. They're just doing stuff. And the people are going down. I just don't get it. This insanity that we look at, think we're doing such a great deal. I'm not great. We're there to witness it, but take your witness and do something proper with it. Learn the system a bit to start making a mess, a record against these people that are harming us. Don't keep that a secret. But going back to some of this control, this digital control, and how the silent runs underneath what they're doing in front of us. A very interesting discussion by Norbert Häraising, I guess, German A, the two dots above the A, however, those of you that know to speak the language pronounce that, please do. Well-kept open secret. Washington is behind India's brutal experiment of abolishing most cash. Understand, it's a continuing experiment against you, and there's nothing proved out. They don't care if they harm you. It's what their agenda needs. Washington is behind India's abolishing cash. Think about this, folks. What if I talk to you about USAID? They are the front organization, the so-called the government agency that destroys people. And this is where you see this story from I think it's a German author here, explaining to people what's really going on. In early November, without warning, the Indian government declared the two largest denomination bills invalid, abolishing over 80% of the circulating cash by value. Amidst all the commotion and outrage this caused, nobody seems to have taken note of the decisive role that Washington played in this. This is surprising, as Washington's role has been disguised only very superficially. So here's an object lesson of how you get done in. And Washington's going to destroy over a billion people, folks. They're going to bring them into the cashless society. The United States government is already promoting it through USAID and other functions, if you think this is just an idea that just came up this week. This has been on the tap for a long time. This story I wanted to get back to a couple weeks ago when it came out. It just takes us so long to get to everything that I think is as important. This one I wanted to get out for sure again. This is what they're doing. This is how they're going to take you down, what they do to do it. You're looking at how they're going to do it to India. They're not taking a little pipsqueak state to figure out the pilot program. They've gone right for a large, poor population base. When they have the middle class wiped out in the United States, you're going to have a large, poor, somewhat large, poor base to do the same thing to. If the United States is on the bleeding edge of this catastrophe against them, do you think that they're going to have two wits about you? You're just in the way, and you're going to be in the way worse if you go ahead and stand up for yourself and demand yourself out of electronic things, electronic digits, Bitcoin. All these things are coming down. I think Japan just okayed Bitcoin as a legal tender, if I remember the chat last night. Japan has already allowed this. If it goes into allowance, they're going to want to regulate it so they don't get outside of what their taxation schemes and or control structures. I told you this going into this. The idea is cool, very, very, very neat. Well, I guess for those that are tied into electronics, if you don't even have it, the farmer in the field, and the miner in the field, and the timber, and the people in the field, and the countryside who are not connected are going to be cut out immediately. Bitcoin is not going to resolve that. This was a setup for a takedown. I don't like that. But that, it seems to be the fact. And then you have all this influx coming in to support all the devastation that goes on, all the needs of people when the government caused the problem, the self-inflicted wound. And it happens overnight. This is a serious, actually, this is a very big story here by Robert Häraising. They're using a catalyst program. So I don't want to get into all that part. You need to see what they're doing to other countries to destroy the people, to bring them down, to make the rich richer, to the poor poorer. I don't hear anything about Black Lives Matter or all these Occupy talking about none of this stuff. We have to figure this out. We're going to have to resolve it. Part of that is stop being vulnerable to it. Now, I did have it down here. Let me just go to the point. A lot of these fairy tales that we're told that you tell yourself, you carry on. Once you read the black and white, it tells all. It eliminates all that stuff. And something about, I can't remember now, Edwin G. Griffin is his name, I think it was. And he did the Jekyll Island book or something, and in there he talks about the government and the Congress when it had gone off a session in the dark of night, but the cabal of 5 people decided to bring the Fed in. And I've told you for years, no, just go read the law, it's not there. Well, I ran across that law. And then, and the date's right there. If you look good on the Cornell site, for those of you digitally connected and savvy, let's see, everyone that does it can't see this, so you have to take my word for it. 12 U.S.C. Code 411, issuance of reserve banks, nature of obligations, redemption. Now, this redemption word came into a big deal in the 90s about the redemption code. Those didn't have a bunch of links. Don't go off on that one. If you are going to go there, you better make sure you identify the links that are not connected in the chain that brings you to that as a viable thing, because it's not, in my mind. It never has been. Very interesting theory, fairy tale, myth, but that's where it ends and stops and goes, because ultimately also you're not the entities that they talk about, and you're dealing with the fictional system, and they have a say. But get to the bottom. This code, as I read from Cornell, gives you the date of this act. This is the Federal Reserve Act. It's dated December 23rd, 1913. Now, why would somebody write a book that tells you it was done in the dark of night after the session of Congress did it after Christmas, right before the New Year? Why would they tell you that? When the code itself explains that Congress was in session, they did this on purpose. The truth is more stranger than fiction when you actually apply to what did they do? Now that you know that destroys what you thought you knew. That isn't so. Now you have to rethink your whole ideas. What is going on here has to really start to become into sharp focus. Otherwise, you're just a bunch of cackling hyenas. You're just a bunch of crickets, I guess, if we go that way again. You're not going to be talking again. You're going to create more fairy tales to impose on everybody else down the road and never, ever get to the point you need to be going. This is being done on purpose. It doesn't take that hard to figure out. You just have to be engaged, care, and do the reading, the substantial reading it takes, and then really think clearly, really with the real critical mind. Thank you for tuning in today. I hope something I said really inspires you to do something. Thank you, Grimner, for all you do. RealLibertyMedia.com. Again, donate if you can, folks. The donate button on the front page or wherever you find it on the web pages. Whatever form you can find. FreedomsNetwork.com, social network, free again. That's also part of, not only part of it, but it's also the continuing expanding network that's being developed by at Grimner's command there for us. And Jules at UCY.tv, thank you very much for your work and help and rebroadcasting this broadcast on Thursdays, and to the terrestrial broadcasters, appreciate it very much. To all those people that still have radio, we may find that's going to be the important point. I don't know, but take care. I'll be here next week. Tech Diffs are nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
That's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.